Ah.
Norman's been adventuring for several days, and he arrives in an alien landscape. It seems like the ground is a deserty environment full of sand, with crystal outcroppings every so often. As he wanders, he sees a trail that seems to head off into the distance, about 5 foot wide, and just seems to go and go and go to a near outcropping. He looks at it and it seems translucent and crystalline in structure, and he thinks back to the village he was in only a couple of days ago, and he remembers that this material was the same that they made their windows out of, and they seem to spin glass made of this same material. He remembers them saying that it was a naturally occurring thing found out in the wild, so he follows the trail. As he grows closer to a crystalline outcropping, he sees a flash of light, some kind of prismatic spray of colours just off the distance. And that draws him in as he sees that slight movement. He creeps up closer and peers around the crystalline structure to see the creature that has left this hardened crystalline trail. He sees a large, shelled creature with 5 appendages coming out of its head, each with a ball on the end. He sees a flail snail.
Oh, a flail snail? I had no idea where that was going. Flail snail. Okay.
Flail Snail is a weirdo, but they're super fun.
Welcome to Challenge Raiders. It's the show where we talk about a D&D monster, and I draw it. My name's Theo.
I'm Neil, resident monster boy.
I need a thing to say that's really makes me sound really cool.
No, Sam, you're a streamer. You're a part
I
of
can
streamer.
say that. Yeah, I'm Sam, world-renowned affiliated streamer on Twitch.com.
Link in the description.
Link in the description.
Guys, I should say resident historian.
Oh, that's true. Well, we can. Oh, that's good. Next time. Anyway, so the flail snail.
Flail snail.
I love the flail snail from afar. I know nothing about it.
Yeah, this is part of the reason why I want to do it.
Okay, the only thing I need to know is how big is it?
Large.
Large. Okay.
It's a large creature. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start drawing a snail.
I think I know like 2 things about it.
So I'll give it a little description. It's got its flail heads. Think of a snail that has several appendages at the top, like a flail, and then it has its conical shell. Apart from that, though, it gets way more interesting when you start reading about everything about this page. It has a full page in the monster manual.
That's quite a lot.
And its stat block goes from the top of the page to the bottom.
Oh, jeez. That's like as much as the vampire gets.
Yeah, its lore section is dwarfed by the rest of it. The first interesting thing about it is what type of creature it is. It's an elemental.
Right, okay.
They're naturally occurring creatures that wander wastelands searching for ores and minerals and particularly crystals to eat.
Sure.
And behind them they leave a trail of what I was describing, that kind of a crystal residue that's almost hard and coarse.
Yeah.
And they leave that behind them, and it actually says here that people collect it and use it as different things.
That's one of the few things I knew. They make like windows with it, I think.
Yeah,
it's
and glass and all kinds
right,
of things.
So it's a raw glass. Essentially, that's cool.
Yeah. It's pretty good. And creature's obviously unaligned. It's just an elemental that goes about its business.
And does it appear in like the regular planes then?
Yeah.
So it's not okay, because that's weird. Because usually elemental stuff you associate with being from
you have
one
to
of
summon
the
them.
elemental planes or being a summoned creature.
Well, they may have long ago, and they just wander whatever environment. So first thing that I'll talk about is their shell.
Sure.
Their shell is anti-magic.
Ah, yeah, like the Terrasque's shell, in fact.
Yeah. It has a chart of exactly what happens when spells fail to hit the flail snail, and to say that it has advantage on all saving throws, disadvantage to spells to attack the snail.
Sure, yeah.
If a spell fails, you roll a d6 to decide what happens.
I do love random tables.
Yep. I mean, that's cool. That's fun.
If you roll a 1 to 2 on the d6, if the spell affects an area or has multiple targets, it fails and has no effect. If the spell only targets the flail snail, it reflects it back.
Nice, yeah, classic. That's cool.
3 to 4, it has no additional effect. The snail just passes.
Yeah, yeah.
And on a 5 to 6, the snail shell converts some of the spell's energy into a burst of force, and each creature within 30 feet of the snail must make a Constitution saving throw or take 1d6 force damage per spell slot level.
Ooh.
So you hit it, and then it just ching, and then carrying on with the shell.
Yeah.
It has an action attack it can do that recharges after a short rest for the snail. The snail's shell emits dazzling coloured light.
Okay.
That's pretty
During this time, the shell shed bright light in a 30-foot radius, and dim light for another 30 feet. And creatures that can see the snail have disadvantage or attack rolls against it.
Because it's so radiant.
And any creature within the bright light and able to see the snail while this is active must make a wisdom saving throw or be stunned until the light ends.
Stunned, that's... Oof, okay. And stunned is
It's
basically...
like a flashbang.
Yeah. And stunned is like basically losing a turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
And then one last thing it can do with its shell, it can actually recoil into its shell.
Oh, yeah. It's a snail.
Gain AC or something.
It gains plus 4 AC.
Plus 4, not bad. What is its AC naturally? I assume it's quite good.
16.
16, so
20.
20, yeah, that's pretty good.
So it can recoil back into its shell and then pop out as a bonus action.
So it's a full action to go back in, though, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not...
So it can pop in, maybe it shines the light, pops in next turn, everyone's like stunned, and it's got higher AC when everyone tries to hit it, and then it pops back out and does its next attack, which is swinging its head wildly at whatever's nearby.
So immediately the first thing I think when I hear that is I think if you were to try and make this just a little tougher, which isn't something you usually talk about, but if you wanted to, you could give that as like a bonus action that retreats into its shell.
Yeah.
So like the party has to think tactically and do like prepared actions to attack when it's out of its shell and stuff like that.
That's actually really fun. I hadn't even thought of that.
Like,
Yeah.
that's like, literally just like that's the first thing I thought, like how, because I was like, how often as a DM are you going to be like using its action to do something other than attack with a monster like these? But that is cool though.
And here is something which is incredibly useful for all the DMs out there. There's a little tiny purple box in the bottom left, which talks about using the shell of a flail snail as a magical item.
You can make like shields out of it, can't you, or something? If you Yeah.
It says here that the value of it weighs £250.
It's quite heavy.
And it will sell and it will sell for 5,000 gold.
Oh, that's interesting that it actually says that. There's not usually like loot tables
magic items
yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, it sells.
And it says that hunters hunt these creatures for their shells.
Yeah, I was thinking that like you could totally have like a. Sorry, yeah, you could have something where people would hunt these. Surely, that's such a prize.
Yeah,
this is what I was talking about with the village. Like, with their maybe they're in the middle of this alien landscape, and they maybe have domesticated these creatures, or they hunt them across the wild,
or something like if the party or whatever your group kills some local flail snails, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? We needed that for the crystals. We like export that for glass. How you ruined our livelihoods."
Yeah.
Could be funny.
And just to describe the magic item.
Sure, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Each snail shell makes 3 shields.
Oh wow!
And for 1 month, while you have that shield, it gives the anti-magic shell ability to the player.
Right, so it doesn't last forever.
But a month in D&D, as we know, is a long time.
Do a lot in a month.
Yeah, depending on the way the campaign goes, that could be the entire campaign.
Yeah. It also says that you can also turn it into, when the magic fades, it leaves behind an exotic shield that is the perfect item from which to make a spell guard shield. So it says that you can use it to make another magic item in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And a flail snail shell can also be used to make a robe of scintillating colours.
Okay.
Oh.
And it talks about like the different magic items you can make using its shell, which nothing else does.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really unique and actually awesome. I like that a lot.
That's really cool.
And just because there's only 1 attack left, I might as well describe it.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Again, it's challenge rating 3, doesn't have any languages, it's immune to fire and poison, so you can't like smoke it out.
Yeah.
And hit points 52, speed 10.
Nice, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that might be the lowest of like any creature in D&D, to be honest.
Yeah,
maybe
there must be something with 5, I suppose.
So, anyway. And this is what's interesting, because with the scintillating shell, it talks about short and long rests for recovering its ability.
Okay.
It also talks about this for its tentacles. Like, a flail snail has 5 flail tentacles on its head.
Uh-huh.
Whenever the snail takes 10 or more damage on a single turn, one of its tentacles dies and falls off.
Right, okay. Oh.
If even one tentacle remains, the snail regrows all dead tentacles within 1d4 days.
Oh.
So it's not in combat. It's like it's a real... Like, all these things are like, you're not meant to kill it. Like, you're maybe meant to drive it off.
Right, yeah, because this is
10
against a
feet
creature.
around.
Yeah, this is something that's gonna... It's not something we've talked about, but, like, the fact that, like, there's a lot of creatures in D&D that shouldn't really be fighting to the death. Like, as... Like, if you do that, like, with any... Just sort of, like, animal, then that's kind of... It's not really realistic in the way that D&D can be. So this could be something that you just, like, drive off by, like, knocking out most of its flail bits, as it were.
And this is even more. The flails, and then if all its tentacles die, the snail retracts into its shell, gaining total cover.
Okay.
And it begins wailing.
Oh!
A sound that can be heard for 600 feet.
That's pretty big.
Stopping only when it dies 5d6 minutes later.
No!
This is awful.
What? Why?
Healing magic that restores limbs, such as regenerate spell, can halt this dying process.
Halt or like completely like stop?
Halt, because it will regrow a limb.
Okay,
and then
cool.
It won't be dying.
It's not just like it leaves
So
it in a state
it
of.
says that you can heal the snail while it dies.
And I assume that's there to make your party feel bad, and then there's an option if you really feel bad to like save it. If I were to be like a real nice DM, I would say any healing will save it. But having like a restoration for it, that's. Oh my god, that's funny.
I guess that's employed as like to just oppose against how valuable it is.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so right, Sam.
Yeah.
Because again, it's really interesting that it has stats, because nothing in the book that I'm aware of has like actual like rules and stats for like loot from it. This isn't it. Like you can say like our dragon's bits are valuable, but it's not. It's just not.
I think there's the odd one, like Hag's Eyes was as well, like from last week.
Well, that's it's a magic item that it'll have. It's not like its skin or whatever. Yeah, it's very different and unique for that.
Yeah, nothing really goes down that kind of like Monster Hunter route. I guess,
it
where,
really
like,
feels Monster Hunter. Yeah,
you're crafting like you're crafting like your armor out of its like its hide and stuff. That doesn't really happen too much.
And like any magic creature. Like a DM will probably say, it's the classic, if you get petrified by a Medusa, then your DM is likely to say something of the Medusa will like help cure petrification. Like it's classic stuff like that. But again, giving you like a full-on, pretty damn good magic item from it is pretty awesome. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a way to give like magic items that isn't just there's a bad guy character like a bandit or evil knight or whatever who's got a magic item.
This may also be an interesting thing as well, is that because it is an elemental, technically you can summon these guys with spells.
That's great. Having a snail friend is pretty great. Also, it's pretty good. Like, that spell stuff, that's going to really, really be effective against certain kinds of enemies.
I don't want to fixate on it, but so it's got 52 HP and it has 5 heads. Yeah. And you'd have to do 10 damage to kill a head in a round.
But you're gonna do more.
So you'd have to like. No, this is the making it cry system.
Oh, is it? You have to leave it on 2 HP.
You'd have to leave it on 2 HP.
You go like perfectly.
Or fight it multiple times.
Find an injured one. Yeah.
Oh, that's tragic.
I kind of.
That's just so specific and terrible.
That's awful.
Yeah, I just. The numbers started crunching, and I was like, "Oh no!
Yeah,
I don't like this."
It kind of makes HP, and then it crawls up and dies.
After a few minutes, hopefully the part.
6 minutes of wailing.
I didn't want to fixate on it too much, but I've never seen a monster talk about that in the book before.
But yeah, crystals are apparently its favourite food.
So that's a weird landscape. You're describing it. It's I guess caves. Mostly, I've sort of drawn it outside because that was sort of how you were talking about it.
Well, that's because I didn't want to put it in a cave.
I mean, that's completely reasonable.
I thought like it's a lot funner if it's like in the environment, maybe doing something, and it's a very alien creature in an alien land, not just underground in a cave chewing on rocks.
Sure, yeah. And again, it means it's kind of obvious to have it underground for that reason. It still would be an interesting underground creature because it's something you kind of associate underground in D&D with Underdark and thus super evil, like everything is horrible apart from the flump. So having something that's kind of
God, I love that flump.
Cute underground could be quite nice. And I can imagine this would be on like a random encounter table if you were doing like cave adventures and you didn't just want to have goblins being the only thing on there.
Well, the way that, again, because we haven't talked about this yet. We have like what we normally do talk about is how to use these things.
Yeah.
Sure.
And like, well, that's kind of what we were touching on just then. The way that I would do it for like any of those encounters is never just have it wandering about.
Right. Yeah.
You have it either doing what it's doing, eating rocks, leaving the trail that, signifies it could, lead people to it, rather than it sneak up on someone else.
Yeah, not a stealthy creature.
Unless it's fully retracted into its shell and they just make camp where it is.
And it wakes up or something.
The party finds like a beautiful crystalline cave and it's like, oh, lovely, we'll stay here. This is very nice. And, and then it's just in there. But I guess it wouldn't necessarily even be violent. Maybe like throughout someone's watch and a long rest, suddenly it just sort of wakes up and starts wandering around and they freak out and then they could decide what to do.
Yeah, maybe you could describe maybe they've been wandering through the crystal cave and sometimes random magical effects happen there. Like sometimes spells get activated and things, and they see that the snail, as it goes through, is immune to those because its shell reflects it.
Yeah,
and it's, that shows it's maybe evolved to live there.
Maybe maybe they go to cast light because it's dark and it just doesn't work on them because they hit on a snail.
They hit the snail, yeah.
That'd be fun.
And then
or
it
the light
wakes
comes
up.
bouncing back at them. And
It's like, what's going on?
It wakes up, starts wandering away,
Yeah.
and then you could describe how beautiful its shell is, and
Yeah, and if they pass like maybe a check, you can go like, hey, that's gonna be worth a lot. That shell, you reckon?
You've heard that they put a tasty price.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. Though. It's a cool. But in terms of uses, I guess this is where it's not quite as versatile, and thus why it might get a lower number from us. Because that is something that we have prized a lot. Is versatility.
It is a monster, isn't it? It's an unaligned monster, like
real neutral, completely unaligned, elemental as well. It's not even like gonna react. It could possibly not even react like a beast.
Right. Yeah.
If I read its stats. 3 intelligence, 5 charisma, 10 wisdom. So it might not even be a beast. It might just be a force that wanders through eating crystals.
Yeah,
and if you attack it, it'll attack you.
It sort of almost feels like it was made through like experimentation, as opposed to like deliberately, or like evolving or being like a creature within the elemental planes.
Yeah.
I can imagine this being something that like we talk about Dark Souls a fair bit, but like imagine like the crystal caves of Dark Souls. Where
it's got a leaves in it.
Yeah, and Seath's got all those experiments going around there. I think having this being like wandering around in the garden of some like crazy wizard could be quite interesting. I like the idea of it being something that like is part of the local like ecosystem and like that people not farm for it itself but farm for what it leaves behind is quite interesting.
Yeah, the again just to read this little bit from its description, not long. Hunters might be lulled into a false sense of confidence upon sighting this ponderous, seemingly non-hostile creature. If any other creature large enough, though, to be a threat approaches too close, the snail unleashes a flash of scintillating light and then attacks with its head.
Oh, so it will attack
if it feels threatened.
If it thinks it needs to.
I guess leaning into the elemental side of it is just like you could have it in an encounter where you're fighting someone and then they just summon it. Like,
yeah, you could use it. It'd be interesting because
it's a bit different than them getting like a fire elemental or whatever.
Sure, yeah, and
it'd be a bit weird, but like maybe you have an eccentric like wizard and
yeah.
It's just a bit it's just a bit flavour. Having the same kind of thing but just a bit different is good enough.
I think it has interesting enough abilities. It's not just a bag of...
would be interesting.
Yeah, it has some cool stuff. We've not done like a lot of elementals, so I can't speak for how exciting the rest of them are, but this is one of... In terms of like what's more interesting from a gameplay point of view, like this is probably more interesting than like the genie, which is just... it has some spells and it has attacks and stuff. The magic resistant shell is very fun because it means random stuff and that's always fun for the DM and for the players. Well, depending on the players, of course, but...
Also, like, just the shell, it gives you something for those fighters as well as the mages. It has that retraction thing that makes it a bit more interesting for those guys.
Yeah. And again, I think like the minor tweak that I mentioned earlier could make that even like make it quite a tactical fight for a party.
And you can always, like, with D&D, you can have a greater Flail Snail.
Oh, easily.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
just ramp this thing up.
Give it more heads.
I also like that they regrow after days. Like,
Yeah, it takes some time.
This creature is written not as something that is like the Hydra. It's like each head is immediately replaced and then it attacks.
Yeah. It's not it's not spec'd for combat really. It's good at it, but it's not. It's just
it can use its shell once per short rest.
It's almost like something that you can imagine being like maybe not a pet for the party because it's too useful, but like an NPC having one as a pet.
That is the thing. A lot of the things about it seems to kind of lean itself to something that you meet multiple times. In a way, so otherwise, why, mention?
Yeah, there's not a lot.
You know what I mean,
it's not common that you'll find the same creature after several days.
Usually, if you meet a creature and it's bad, you just kill it.
Yeah, and if you leave it on its own, you're probably not going to come by the same way. Yeah.
The Crystal Cave scenario works very well for that, or the garden where they accidentally attack it in the garden, and then I like the idea with the Underdark idea now of like a Smurfeblin riding it like
something riding would be great, like a king because they're so sparkly. Oh. That could be pretty good. The Grand Vizier because it can cast spells if you shoot him at him.
I want a Kuatoa on top of it.
And Kuatoa would worship the hell out of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want like an Archpriest on there.
A Kuatoa warlock whose patron is a Flail Snail. That'd be pretty funny. Norman does not know what's about to hit him, by the way.
Of flail.
Norman's picked up this delicious looking crystal. This Flail Snail.
Oh.
This Flail Snail's very
it's
jealous.
It's
gonna destroy him. He's gonna get ruined.
It's real cold up and ready.
It's gonna thwop him so hard.
Do we want to try and come to an agreement on the number for this?
Yeah, this one's hard.
Yeah.
I'm feeling higher than...
I thought it's higher than 10 for me.
I like it a lot, but also...
I think we got to reward the magic item.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It's so unique.
So unique, so awesome. Like,
I just don't think... that's why I can't give it under 10 for that, because I just think that's so different.
It's something that, like, the players, if they think of it, like I thought, they'll think they're smart, and like, yay. And then they'll think more of the DM, because they'll think, oh, they're letting me do that on the spot, awesome. And if they do know the rule, they'll just think, nice, it's a cool reward, this is something. But then there is a moral choice built into it, because it's so sad. And like that's another thing. It's got so much ridiculous. It's got so much ridiculous like melodrama built into it, which is amazing. I feel like this is someone's favorite monster, and it might be me. I'm not sure. Though. I'm not sure. It's what I want to like run now. I want to put a Flail Snail somewhere. I want to make a character who has a Flail Snail like pet.
I tell you what, fully describing the Flail Snail. I went into this being like, okay, this is going to be like this is probably going to be a low one or a relatively high one. It could be low because of how the hell do you use one of these things?
Yeah.
But I think that what we've come to the conclusion of is the creature's so cool, you will use one of these things somehow.
You'll work it in if you want it.
You love it, so you will use it. Like it, and that's a way a lot of my favourite monsters will work. It's not like I'm not thinking. This will be the perfect place. I'll put a Hydra here because that'll be great. I'm thinking, I love the Hydra. Where am I going to put it? And I think with the Flail Snail is, I like the Flail Snail. I'm going to make a character for the Flail Snail to appear around, I'm going to have it like if you're doing like random encounters in the wilderness, I'm going to have a Flail Snail encounter like ready to go, like so. And one day they will roll it, and I'll have a great time like running it.
I think the other thing that's a bit cool about it as well is like it's a bit of a like. I mean, not that any of us are too steeped in like, because we're a bit too young for it, but like too steeped in older D&D. But it's a bit of a legacy creature.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's cool that like Volo's brought it back in.
But yeah, number-wise,
numbers.
If we want to go high and recommend it,
I feel like I want to recommend this.
Then, if we want to go high, I don't want to go above 15.
I agree with that 100%. I will also say. This isn't like a D&D monster. This is not. You don't it's interesting to fight, but everything about it is like trying to make you not. I don't know. I'm really
To be
torn.
honest, like I'm trying to. I don't remember what we put, but I'm trying to think back to other things we gave. Like
I was
in the
wondering
13
about-
and 14. So I'm thinking like a 12.
Yeah, I don't want to give 14 to it either because of... I feel like we're leaning on 14 a little bit.
We loved it. We do love it, and I feel
That's
like
what I'm going to put out there.
We need to make a decision. Like, I think I'm liking 12 because that's above. Because we're saying it's above average, which 10 should be average. It hasn't worked out so much because we've been picking a lot of monsters we like.
We pick monsters we like. Don't worry, we'll sort that out.
Yeah. So I think that 12 is fair. It's clearly an above average monster that doesn't have legs, literally.
I feel this is like, it's great fun, but it's not something that you're gonna like pull out in lots of different situations or like have a like this is gonna be one part of one day of playing D&D. It's
you
not
get
gonna
one.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's not going to be like, because like, when we're talking about the ghoul, I, for example, was talking about how you could use it as a low-level, like, feral vampire equivalent, and you could have, like, a whole, like, low-level quest line about it. I do not think you could have... The only low-level quest the only Flail Snail quest you could have is, you've been tasked to go hunt one, and then you feel bad. Which could be great fun.
If you really want to use them intently, then you do exactly what we've just been talking about, and have a town early on set up around gathering these materials, and the villagers explicitly tell you not to kill the snails.
Yeah. And then... So it's an encounter. It's not like a quest. And for that, I'm willing to give it a 12 as well. I'm okay with that. Okay. I feel like I might personally go to like a 13, but I'm fine with giving it a 12.
I think for the sake of the rating system,
we can't let our love for the Flail Snail bias us towards it. And I think
we got to be stringent and objective in our feelings rating.
I think this fits around there just fine.
Oh, I'm very in. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm in on that. That's great. I love that show was awesome.
I looked up the actual Flail Snail art and I forgot, for some reason I decided to like make it a Dark Souls 1 Crystal Hollow guy.
Yeah.
Just cover it in crystals, which doesn't really make sense.
So it would be eating them, I guess, but...
Yeah, it's eating them, but it's making them...
It could metabolize them, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and it's got the big front one for shooting out light and blinding things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very good. I honestly prefer this to the book one.
I think, yeah.
I looked at the book one, it's got a face, which I forgot give this one. It's got like a little face. And then the flails come out above it. Mine's all flail.
It could be horribly octopusy and like in the middle of that reeve of tentacles.
Yeah, there's a mouth.
Ugh.
I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
And also, because when I originally sketched it, I like drew the trail as like little crystals as well, but then I thought, well, the peasants use it as glass, so it's just going to leave like a flat pane of glass.
Yeah, they can just pick it up, yeah.
Just peel it off.
That's pretty great,
yeah. That's kind of how I envisaged it as well, so, yeah.
Again, it's a cool funny monster, but it is what it is. I
mean, it's all pretty cool. I would stick by like our number and not put it higher because, well, also with the economy stuff, 5th edition is really weird with money anyway, but that's a whole other topic. We won't get into that now.
Yeah. Again, in a way, like you could almost say it's a bad thing because it then. By having those rules, that's just something that if you don't want to use those, you have to then ignore them, and more rules is bad. I don't know. I prefer it personally, but
I think players want that. From my experience, they want that RPG. Find the gold. No, but they like that stuff, even though in like 5th edition, it's like so much more on the DM to provide that stuff, like to make it a real economy, kind of.
I think. For a new DM reading the Flail Snail, I don't know. That's the problem because the Flail Snail is such a weird thing. Like a new DM isn't necessarily gonna like read it that carefully. But if you didn't have much experience, you might read that and get really inspired to use that stuff. And if there was more of that sort of thing for other creatures, then you might get more interesting ideas based on that as well. Obviously, if you've been doing it for a while and quite creative anyway, then you can figure that sort of stuff out for any monster, really. But having it there is nice. Anyway.
It could be a nice project for somebody, like maybe I might start doing this of going through the monster manual and thinking about that kind of thing, because like there's got to be loads of animals that like can be domesticated or can be can have something that they can provide a local... Because people exist with the animals around them, even if they're predators and wolves or whatever in the real world.
There's a coexistence. I think on top of that as well, I think it would be cool having, obviously with the shell, and you can make it into a magical item, like that kind of thing. I think looking at other creatures and seeing, if they've got like a specific thing and kind of
definitely
making that and stuff is pretty interesting. Obviously, like a lot of that is you can be homebrewed, and obviously that's real fun. But I think that's quite a cool thing as well.
And I do just want to say of how fancy your shell that you've drawn. I love the colours as well. How fancy the shell you've drawn. I can imagine it's a hat for a cloud giant.
Oh god, actually, a shower cap. That would be very funny. I'm just imagining that now. That's pretty great.
Yeah, pretty good. Much like the Flail Snail, you should sub-slime for more.
I think you might have to redo that one. I think try again. I'll keep it in, but try again.
It doesn't matter whether you win, lose, or flail. You always subscribe for more.
That doesn't make sense either, but I guess 2 bad ones equals 5 thumbs up. Speaking of thumbs up,
much like the Flail Snail's clear secretions, you could leave a comment behind.
Very good. Very good.
Comments.
Very good.
Yeah, leave a trail of comments.
Yeah.
Below the video for peasant stuff.
Oh, look at these gems.
Oh, lovely comments, dearie.
I promise I'll harvest the finest gems in the comment section.
There's some lovely comments down here.
Look at all these comments. I can make a lovely window out of this one.
Cast the cantrip like video on the thumb up button. It's not a shell of the Flail Snail, so you won't accidentally end up liking yourself.
Who would want that?
Flawless. Absolutely flawless.
Right.
That's a bit more negative than I'd hoped.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
but you've done it now.
I've done it now. I can't think of it.
can't edit it out.
They can leave some glorious secretions against that comment in there.
Yeah, it's a nice shiny. The thumbs up button is worth 4,000 gold pieces. Try and take it by clicking on it.
If you don't press the subscribe button, I might curl up in my shell and scream for 4 minutes until I die.
If you cut off all my fingers, not only will I die, there won't be any more drawing videos.
Right.
Maybe that's what you want. So long as you don't dislike the video, that's fine.
Yeah.